we're talking about album 3, and in our earlier podcasts, we went through album 1, which is the story of my coming of age. Album 2 is about the exhilaration of surviving, a terrible childhood, and it's all yellows and greens and jokes, and I can't believe I survived all that. Let's have a party. Let's, go crazy and have fun. Album 3 is about coming to terms with life. Say, okay, I've survived all this. How do I establish a rapport with life? How do I live a good life? And more importantly, how do I get over myself? And if I could give advice to young artists, catharsis, as we experienced in albums 1 and 2, is an important source of art, but it can be limiting if that's all there is. If we continually tell that same story year after year, decade after decade, the audience goes, come on, buddy, get over yourself. And that's what album 3 is about, establishing a rapport with life and connecting with the sea of stories. So Iggy, Spike, and Lester is an example of that. It's the story of our band and our insane productivity with insane quality. It's an honor, as I've said, to play with this ensemble, be able to write and record with them, and to be able to do these wonderful podcasts. And it's astonishing how productive and how high quality we produce. So David and I started joking about it. And our shtick was that the secret of our productivity was Extraterrestrials. And David, as he is wont to do, gave them names, gave them a personality.
Originally, Iggy, it was Iggy, Spike, and Kent. It was
yeah.
And then, but for artistic reasons,
yeah,
Pascal thought, you know what, Lester just sounds better.
Yeah.
So, but poor Kent.
Yeah, he's like Pete Best of the Beatles. He missed his big chance. So over time, these Extraterrestrials have developed a personality, and it was so engaging that I wrote a song about it, and I shared it with the band and with David, and we picked a Texas two-step style. And it's part of engaging with the sea of stories. All these crazy stories are around us. For example, Extraterrestrials helping this band create all this music. And I'll pass the baton to David to explain how he and the band created this goofy, over-the-top, funny, lighthearted atmosphere.
Part of the joke began, Davide Sambrota, our fantastic, amazing piano player, he was here in the studio. We were mixing something. I think it was probably on album 2. And then he and I always, we would just say, like, how's this guy writing these songs? Like, how is it even possible? Like and then as the joke, evolved, by the time we got to Iggy, Spike, and Lester, then, we would just go like, oh yeah, it must be Iggy, Spike, and Lester. So the thing is, like, we're producing an incredible amount of material, and me as a producer with 30 years in the business, I've got a process and it works, and I'm able to get things done very, very efficiently, and everybody knows exactly what to do, where to go, how to contribute to the project. And so so we always credit, and we go very detailed in our jokes, like like they're only 6 inches tall, but how do they play that bass, that upright bass that's like 2 meters tall? They're extraterrestrial powers that allow them to do this. So, all right, let's get into the song a bit. I'll play it for you, and then we can tear it apart and go a little in depth. Here we go.
And how do you write these songs and raise a family? How do you have a band and keep your sanity? Well, I tell you all my secret, please try to be discreet. Extraterrestrials keep me on my feet. They're from over the moon and far beyond the sun. Iggy, Spike, and Lester know how to get things done. Now you may doubt my story, but they're from Alpha Centauri, my interstellar screw propeller cyclone cellar band.
Like, as far as like hooks go, like the thing I love about, you know, Pascal's melodies, you know, that's a very Bach, you know, kind of thing to do, the shape and the, you know, one of the things I always talk about when I'm ever, you know, doing, you know, classes or teaching about composition is this idea of melodic contour, and the payoff of that, you know, just that movement and that shape.
Interstellar screw propeller cyclone.
And the reason this is unique in vocals in general, if you look at all church hymns, everything is done in stepwise motion. So it's always small intervals, you know, like dum 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 dum. That's all stepwise motion. There's no big leaping intervals. And, you know, Pascal at the very end just chose, which is way more difficult for vocalists to do that. And so we have to, like, always, you know, we always talk about Pascal's songwriting, and sometimes we don't talk enough about his great voice and his ability to, well,
Thank you.
that's
Very
it's
kind.
not an easy thing to sing, and any singer will tell you that, because most singing is, you know, just as humans, we generally do these small stepwise and counter step, or step and tone and semitone in the official, if we're talking about music theory. So, and this was like I think a minor six and a major six or something. Yeah, so that's a big interval.
It's all the years listening to Puccini and Verdi, you know, and opera. I mean, another suggestion to young artists: listen to everything. If you're an actor, watch everything. The young, the old, the classic, the obscure, and you find gems.
So, for example, this is years ago, talking with a friend, and you know, he was talking about what an amazing drummer Stuart Copeland was, and how the Police were just, they like revolutionized music. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know the English beat, and do you know the Specials? Because that's where the Police, you know, got a lot of their ideas from these, and a lot of those guys, like Everett Morton, for example, the drummer of the English Beat, he was the English Beat, and, you know, he's from Jamaica, you know, and that's where Stuart Copeland took, you know, a lot of his influence. Now, Stuart Copeland is considered, and will always be considered, one of the greatest drummers of all time. He really is, because he took it and then he made it his. He made it uniquely Stuart Copeland's, you know, but the point is, like, if you're a drummer and you're like, you love Stuart Copeland, try to find his influences. Try to find out, okay, so what is it that got them to there, you know? So if you look at the Beatles, you know, they covered a lot of great songs from Little Richard, and you know, a lot of the great original rock and roll artists that were, you know, Black American, and, you know, and like the Rolling Stones, you know, they looked at Muddy Waters and, you know, Lightning Hopkins, and, you know, so you know, so for example, like if you love the Rolling Stones, then you should study Muddy Waters and Lightning Hopkins and, you know, Son House and Robert Johnson. Like, go as far back, because those guys were influenced by the latter, you know, like, in other words, Muddy Waters and Lightning Hopkins took influences from Son House, where I really think, you know, Son House is like where it begins, you know, blues. And then he influences Robert Johnson, and then it goes on and on and on and on.
But just building on your point, the first time I heard Little Walter play that big harmonica, and Little Walter, for our listeners, is one of the great Chicago bluesmen. And when I first heard him sing Last Night, or Blues with a Feeling, and that harmonica sounded like a wounded beast. And we use that metaphor in the song Crazy Angels. He's just wailing and pouring his heart out. And I immediately connected it with the great Puccini arias or Verdi arias. Someone is facing a catastrophe in life. They're blazing out of life, and they're pouring all their passion into it. And it was the same thing. And then when I heard Coleman Hawkins for the first time, or Lester Young, those great saxophone players of the 40s and 30s that revolutionized how the saxophone was played. It's the same thing. It's all the same. They come from the same place. It's the human spirit just wailing, sometimes in outrage, sometimes in grief, sometimes in celebration, but it's all the human spirit. So Puccini and Verdi and Coleman Hawkins and Lester Young and Little Walter and the great blues men that David talked about, it's all one story, And again, to young artists, learn from those that have come before us. All the people that we're talking about are giants, and we're standing on their shoulders. So this song, Iggy, Spike, and Lester, we chose a Texas two-step, and in doing that, we're paying homage to Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, those really funny Texas swing songs of the 40s and 50s that inspired Lefty Frizzell and Hank Williams, and later on Clint Black and George Strait, that kind of funny, droll, over-the-top Texas humor. We're standing on their shoulders, and we respect them and are part of that tradition. And so learn from all these people.